Now the last one is analysis of connection, the fifth one. Analysis of connections. In the analysis of connection, first we will see types of failure in connection, and the second one is analysis of various types of connections. Analysis of various types of connection. In that, we will see first one is shear connection. The shear connection we will do either by bolt or rivet. The second one is welding. The next one is combined shear and tension connections. Combined shear and tension connection, which is also call it as eccentric loaded connection. Eccentric loaded connection. So there are two this also bolt or rivet you can connect. Next one is welding. Okay, now we will see these things one by one. Okay, so first we are going to see types of failures in connection. Okay, the first one is types of failures. A. Types of failures in connections. Types of failures in connection. First one is bolt failure. Second one is plate failure. Here we can say bolt or rivet. Okay, both are same. In the bolt failure, okay, there are two types of failure. In the bolt failure, shear failure of bolt, bearing failure of bolt, bearing failure of bolt, tearing failure of bolt, tearing failure of bolt. So minimum of these two I can take. This is the shear failure, the shear strength. The corresponding strength is equal to bearing. The corresponding strength is PT. Now plate failure. There are four types of plate failure. One is shear failure of plate. The second one is splitting failure of plates. Third one is bearing failure of plate, bearing failure of plates. Fourth one is tearing failure of plate, tearing failure of plates. So in bracket you can write or tension failure. Tension failure. Okay. Now the minimum of these three is bolt value. Bolt value, or we can say rivet value, or we can say rivet value. Minimum of these three is, we can call it as bolt value. Okay. Now the minimum of these six, minimum of these, not six, these seven minimum is used for calculating efficiency of connections. Okay, this bolt value used for finding number of bolt, so these are the some of the points. Okay, now we are going to see one by one. Shear failure of bolt. You know, the first one is shear failure of bolt. Shear failure of bolt. What is a shear failure of bolt? Let me explain this. Suppose there was a connection. Okay, and this is having a bolt. Okay, these two are connected through a bolt. So this is the bolt connected by a bolt. Okay, this is connected by a bolt. Now when this is subjected to a force P, now this portion subjected to a shear, this portion, okay, this is the plane, right? In this plane there was a shearing stress will be developed corresponding to this force. There was a shearing stress will be developed on this direction on this plane. So this is called it as the shear stress. Now because of this force, you know how this will fail. So this will fail, this bolt will be fail is something like that. So this is the initial position of a bolt. This bolt okay, goes into something like that. So it gets fail. Okay, it gets fail, something like that. Okay, so this failure is called the shear failure. Okay, and corresponding strength is equal to, we can write PS. So this bolt will gets break into two part, okay, because of this force. So this is called as the shear failure. The next one is bearing failure of bolt or rivet. Bearing failure of bolt or rivet. Here I can say this is bolt or rivet. Okay. Now bearing failure of bolt or rivet, let us consider the same lap joint. This is the lap joint. Okay. In this is the bolt. Okay. And it is subjected to a force P, the same force P. Because of this force, here, this portion, okay, this portion is subjected to a stress, bearing stress. While pulling this direction, therefore this side of the bolt getting bear. Because of this direction of force, this direction, in this direction, there was a bearing. Okay, so because of this bearing, how the failure is happen. The failure will be happen is something like that. So the failure will be happen. Okay, failure will be happen is something like that. Okay, so this is the bearing. Because of the bearing, so this portion, the size will be reduced. Okay, so the stress corresponding will be act bearing stress. So this is the bearing stress. So the bearing strength, we can write bearing strength of bolt is BS. Okay, so this also PB. So this is the bearing failure of bolt. The next one is a tearing failure of bolt that we are going to see. Tearing failure of bolt. Tearing failure of bolt. Tearing failure of bolt that we are going to see. Suppose there was a bolt. When this bolt is subjected to a tension force, subjected to tension force P, then there was a cross-sectional yielding will be happen. So while applying a force, then this becomes, that means this. Okay, so this fails something like that fashion. So this getting yield, this getting yield. Okay, so this getting yield, and it becomes something like that. Okay, so it becomes is something like that. Okay, there was a failure, there is a cup cone failure. So this kind of failure will be happen on a bolt. Okay, so this is all about the failure of bolt, and the strength corresponding to this failure is tearing strength of tearing strength of bolt. Okay, that is PTB, tearing strength of bolt. The first one is shearing strength of bolt. This is bearing strength. Okay, I can take it as PSB, bolt. Okay, PSB, bearing, shearing strength of bolt, bearing strength of bolt. Next one is tearing strength of bolt. Okay, so these are the some of the important points. Corresponding strength is tearing strength of bolt. And the next one is that we are going to see is this is over, right? Bearing, shearing, and tearing. Now we are going to see shearing failure of bolt, splitting failure of bolt, bearing failure of bolt, and tearing failure of bolt, that we are going to see now. Okay, so first one we are going to see shear failure of plate. Shear failure of shear failure of plate, that is PSP, plate. Okay, this is the bolt. Okay, shear failure of plate, you know, there was a connection, there was a connection. Okay, in that there was a bolt. Okay, so this is one bolt, this is the another bolt, and this is the direction of force P. Because of this force P, there was a crack will be happen, is something like that. This is the crack. Okay, and here also is a crack will be formed. So shear failure means on the plate, this is the plate. Okay, on the plate there was a failure is happened along the direction of the force. That failure is called shear failure of plate. So here we can write cracks are developed parallel to the direction of force. Here the cracks are developed parallel to the direction of force. See, this is the direction of force, parallel to the direction of force there was a crack. Okay, the second one is a splitting failure of splitting failure of plates. Splitting failure of plate, that is P, splitting failure of plate. Okay, SP means splitting, P means plate. Okay, the splitting failure of plate, the meaning is, okay, there was a plate, for example, this is the one plate, and this is the another plate which was fixed over that. Then because of this splitting, so the failure which was happened, okay, is something like that. Okay, which will be happen something like that. Here there was a bolt. Okay, this failure is called as a splitting failure. Okay, now it occurs due to it occurs due to diagonal tension. It occurs due to diagonal tension in the plate, diagonal tension in the plate at a bolt level. At a bolt level. At a bolt level, if the excessive diagonal tension Then there was a failure which has happened, that is a splitting failure of plate. And the third one is, we can say, bearing failure of plate. Bearing failure of plate. So bearing failure of plate, in the sense, we can write this is P bearing failure of plate. The corresponding strength is this one. Okay. Now there was a plate. Okay. There was a plate. In that, this is the another plate which is fixed over that. Here there was a uh, bolt. Okay. Now because of this bolt, okay, this surface, this edge getting bare, something like that. This area will be somewhat extent. Okay. So this area, this area plate getting beard. Okay. So it occurs due to, it occurs due to when bearing strength, when the bearing strength of plate is less. When the bearing strength of plate is less, then this kind of failure will be happen. You know, these three failures, these three failure or failure of plate, shearing, splitting, bearing, or can be avoided, can be avoided, or can be prevent. These three failures can be prevent by using the proper end distance. Okay. Now these three failures, these three failures are happen due to insufficient, due to insufficient end distance, due to insufficient end distance. By providing, by providing proper end distance, by providing proper end distance, we can prevent, we can prevent these three, we can prevent these three failures. Okay, by providing proper end distance, we can prevent these three types of failure. Okay, now the last one under the plate failure is, that is tearing failure of plate. Okay, tearing failure of plate, that is tearing failure of plate, PTB. Okay, so there is a plate, and this is another plate which is connected over that. Okay, and this is P, is subjected to force P, and there was a bolt here, here another one bolt. Now you know there was a failure will be happen, crack will be happen perpendicular to this. Okay, so here we can write cracks are, the failure is happen perpendicular to the force along the plate. Okay, here cracks are developed perpendicular to the direction of force. Cracks are developed perpendicular to the direction of the force. Okay, so these all are about the failures. So this is the fail 1, 2, 3. These three are the failure of the bolt. 1, 2, 3, 4. These four are the failure of the plate. And as I said earlier, for a design efficiency calculation, you have to take minimum of these 7. For calculating the bolt value means the strength of a single bolt. Okay, you have to take minimum of these 3. Okay, and if you want to find out the number of bolt, then you need a bolt value. Okay, by using that bolt value you can able to calculate the number of the bolt. So this is all about the types of failure in connection. That is a part A. Okay, types of failure in connection we having seen. Now analysis of various types of connection. So first we are going to see the shear connection. Shear connection I will do first bolt or rivet. I will teach in the general manner. Okay, general way. Next one is a welding. So these two first I will teach. Okay, under shear connection. Then we will go eccentric loaded connection for bolt and rivet and welding. Okay, so first we are going to see bolted connection. Okay, that is a B. B is a types of analysis of various types of connection. Analysis of various types of connections. First we are going to see the shear connection. Okay, shear connection. In the shear connection, there are 3 types of shear connections. One is the lap connection, lap joint. Next one is a single cover butt joint, single cover butt joint. Next one is a double cover butt joint. So we are going to see now one by one. Okay, what is the lap joint? What is the analysis? Then single cover butt joint, then double cover butt joint, so on and so forth. Okay,